They go out and make the playoffs for the first time in a full season. They made it in 20. In a full season for the first time since they won the World Series in 2003. That is something to build on.
FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal caught that little clip. Do you remember that, Ken?
I believe we were doing that game at Fox. If I'm not mistaken. I'm not positive about that, but I believe those theatrics were live on Fox television. Before AJ was a different kind of actor on Fox, but that was different.
That's the only way that AJ gets to work with Ken is when he was playing. Otherwise, he's on the B reel.
It's true. It's true. Ken gets to go on location. We get nobody. But we got listen, Saturday we had Scherzer and Lodolo. I mean, Ken can't get those two on.
That's a big.
So I think we win.
That's a big pitching matchup right there. So
pretty good.
On the pitching front, Ken, I know you wrote this morning in the windup about free agents offering the best value, and let's focus on the pitching side of things. There have actually been quite a few gems. I know we're a month in, but some teams did really well with signings, and they weren't necessarily the biggest money signings.
Well, Scott, you're absolutely right. First of all, we're 1 month in, so to judge any of this is frankly premature. At the same time, it's interesting to me what we've seen so far. A guy like Jordan Hicks, a guy like Reynaldo Lopez, those are converted starters, converted relievers, guys who are now starting, and they're off to great starts. Now, how long they can sustain it, I don't know. Shota Imanaga is another one, and he was a guy that got $53 million over 4 years. Wasn't the greatest contract, right? But at the same time, he has come out and performed in a huge way, better than Yamamoto for the Dodgers. So, again, what does it all mean? Probably not all that much. We have to judge these deals over time, not 1 month. But it's interesting to me that the converted relievers have done well. And you look at Seth Lugo, that's the last name on that list. Seth Lugo was another converted reliever who became a starter. That was last year with the San Diego Padres, and he's carrying it forward here. Now, if you go back to last year with Lugo, he threw 146 innings. I would imagine that if the Braves got 146 out of Lopez and the Giants got 146 out of Hicks, that they would be thrilled. So we'll see how this goes, but it's just been interesting to me so far to see some of these pitchers who did not get monster deals perform at such a high level. And I want to mention one other player who is not on that list because he's not a pitcher, but my goodness, guys, Justin Turner. 1 year, $13 million, 2 home runs last night. His OPS is around 950. You can't get much better than that.
Ken, I have to say, you sound like Peter Bendix from the Marlins. It's too early. It's too early to start judging how crappy we are. So, I mean, I'm
not too early to start judging the Marlins. It's too early to start judging free agent contracts.
I'm just saying, you sound just like the head of baseball.
I know where you're going with this, AJ. Don't go there.
Why not? You said it's too early. It's too early. Our catchers have the worst OPS in the history of the world, but it's too early to judge. Their career 220.
Yeah, but those catchers that he's talking about aren't particularly great players to begin with. That's the difference here. So I know Peter Bendix has taken a lot of heat for that press conference. And listen, the way this team has collapsed after making the playoffs last year, they deserve a lot of heat. And I've written about this. I wrote about it in the offseason. You sign one free agent coming off a playoff appearance. And I know they had some things go their way, 1-run record, etc. But at the same time, hey, you got to try. And those are the teams that you can get behind a little bit, the teams that are trying. The Royals, the Tigers, the Reds. These teams now are starting to push forward, whereas the Marlins were in position to do that, and they took a step back. Now, is that Peter Bendix's decision? I highly doubt it. It's probably the owner's decision, Bruce Sherman, and Peter Bendix was hired to execute that vision to try to make the Marlins more like Tampa Bay. Well, to this point, we've seen only one Tampa Bay. And with Miami, what they've done is extremely disappointing. It's anti-competitive, honestly, compared to these other teams that have tried to build up a little bit and put themselves in position to get a third wild card like the Marlins did last year. It's not that complicated.
So kind of a couple things that stood out to me are, number one, the way that they basically describe that it's going to take time, as if there's a rebuild going on here, but you just made the playoffs. The other part, I heard him on the interview on Sirius with Bowden and Duquette, our friends on there. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he essentially said that they have all the resources that they need. And the reason that they didn't make many moves was because they just wanted to roll with what they had. So there's two layers here. One, of course, that's why I'm calling this out. Ken, one part is what they're doing is wrong because you're rebuilding again. But two is you need to be transparent. Miami's dealt with a lot of crap for a long time. They're like, please don't tell us that. We know that's not true. You didn't want to do anything. You wanted to roll with the same exact team. Like, that's making everyone feel stupid.
I agree, Scott. And first of all, you want to talk about transparency? If you want to start there, and we should, then say what this is. We're rebuilding. We're not competing this year. We're rebuilding. Teams never want to admit this, of course. Oh, we've got a chance to win the World Series. No, you don't. And if you're taking that direction and you have a vision long term and maybe it works out, okay, that's fine. People can live with that. I don't know that they can live with a less than transparent vision, which this seems to be. As for being happy with their team, Jorge Soler left their team. This is just one example. Who did you replace him with? I know they acquired Josh Bell at the deadline last year. Well, he's our power now. Come on. And this is the kind of thing that if you're paying attention, if you're a fan of the Marlins, if you're a fan of the game, it kind of drives you nuts. And it shouldn't be this way. And this is the problem I have with them. One free agent for $5 million, Tim Anderson, after last year. They thought their pitching was going to be good, and it should have been good. They got crushed by injuries. I get that. But at the same time, man, they had offensive questions up and down. They did not address them.
So if the Marlins aren't going to try to win, we already know that. Do the Guardians get some of their players? Do the Guardians get to trade with some of their players? Because the Guardians want to win. Whether they spent or not, they're winning. Are we ready for a parade, as Mr. Rosenthal said?
Well, honestly, their offseason wasn't much better than the Marlins. And it was kind of a curious offseason, to say the least. They've had some good things happen. Some bad things happen too, frankly, during this great run they're on. Bieber getting hurt, Gavin Williams not coming back just yet. Those are pretty big developments for a team that is in their payroll position. Now, are we ready for a parade? No, we're not ready for a parade. They've got huge starting pitching questions. But I will say this for the Guardians. Now, their fans are rightly upset often with their lack of spending and the way they go about it. But like the Rays, they have a track record of building competitive teams. I would have put the A's in this equation too before they started tearing it down. The A's had a track record of being competitive, even though they didn't have high payrolls. Those teams kind of get the benefit of the doubt to some degree. The Marlins do not. They have no track record. And last year, let's put this in historical context, they go out and make the playoffs for the first time in a full season. They made it in 20. In a full season for the first time since they won the World Series in 2003. That is something to build on. And they, again, took a step back. The Guardians are a different story. They do compete every year, some years better than others. And granted, it's in a weak division, but they revamped their hitting program. And it's amazing to me how stressing hitting the ball hard can make a difference in an offense like theirs. They didn't stress it before. They were a contact-oriented team. Went into spring training and said, listen, let's change it up a little bit. Focus on hitting the ball hard. Let's go. And my gosh, they've done it. Jose Ramirez, of course, one of the most underrated players in the game. Josh Naylor coming on, and he is one of the most underrated players in the game as well, in kind of a different way. So they've got some good things going on there. And in Stephen Vogt's first year, it's pretty impressive.
Hey, Ken, just check your phone because I think Peter Bendix is online too. Just saying.
Okay. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate it.
Ken has 2 lines. Ken has 2 lines on his phone. That's pretty cool, Ken.
Believe it. He's got multiple phones.
Yeah, how do you even do that? Ken, before we let you go, I do have one quick question. I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this guy, Stephen Vogt's first year with the Guardians. We know they have great player development and a pitching system and all that kind of stuff, but there seems to be something culture related too. How much do you think that Stephen Vogt taking the helm there has contributed to their success this year? That clubhouse. I don't know if you spent any time in there, but what do you think he means to them so far?
Trevor, I haven't spent a lot of time with them, so I really can't say for sure. But clearly, what's interesting to me about Vogt and Pat Murphy in Milwaukee is that these guys replaced pretty well-known managers, very accomplished managers. managers who were known for establishing a certain culture and guiding teams that played above themselves. And yet these teams are both doing it even with the new managers, the first-time managers, Murphy and Vogt. So that's intriguing to me. And I don't know if it's just kind of baked into the organization to a certain degree, or if these guys as well are having that kind of effect. Stephen Vogt, as you guys all know, is one of the great people in the game, humble and yet confident. He's got all the qualities that you would want. So I am sure, without being there, that yes, he's having a pronounced effect on them and a positive effect on them. But I can't say exactly how that goes because guess what, guys? We can't measure the impact of culture. Now, some people will tell us, because we can't measure the impact of culture, that it really doesn't matter. But everyone who has a clue about the game knows that it really does matter, and it matters a whole lot.
Ken, you're talking about overachieving. You're talking about all this stuff. The Cardinals have been a team for a year and a month now. Have been disappointing, I guess, to be nice. And then Nolan Arenado comes out and says, "Oh, Mason Wynn, he inspired me to get back to trying to catch every ball." Like, is this a sign? Because we've heard it now. Mason Wynn said, "Oh, I had to check," and oh, he pushed Brandon Crawford when they brought him in. It pushed me, right? And then last year they kind of had a lackluster year, and they were like, "We need more veteran leadership." So is this just an example of what's wrong in St. Louis? Like, as a veteran player, I mean, listen, you bring in a young kid and you'd be like, "Yeah, he's going for everything." You're like, "Yeah, he's got great energy," But to hear a guy say, "Well, man, he inspired me to get back to what I was doing before," it's an interesting quote to me.
It was really interesting to me too, AJ, and I was the one who was interviewing Arenado and talking to him about Mason Wynn. And I'd asked him, "Hey, what's it like playing alongside him?" That was the question. And his answer was along the lines of what you said. I didn't take it as a negative toward Arenado. The way I took it was he's a veteran player who over the years has kind of grown into his ways and kind of maybe needed a jolt. And that's what he was admitting. I needed a little kick in the butt, and this kid's given it to me without doing it intentionally. It's just watching him play and being alongside him. It kind of makes me feel like, hey, I got to go a little harder. And he made the point to say, I've always gone for balls hard. That's never been a problem. 10 Gold Gloves would attest to that. But we talk about the impact of energy in the clubhouse. This goes back to culture a little bit. Energy can mean a lot, and sometimes young players bring that in ways that can really transform a team a little bit. I don't know that Mason Wynn is transforming the Cardinals, so to speak, but he's certainly helping Arenado, and it does help at times to have this kind of mix. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe the Cardinals had gotten a little stale, and maybe Wynn's energy is helping them reach a different level.
All right, last one here. The Blue Jays. Are we too close? I feel like every time you're on, we always ask Ken Rosenthal a Blue Jay question. But are we too soon to think about a teardown of the Blue Jays? Because there's some intriguing pieces on that team that a lot of teams might want to have.
I got asked this on Fair Territory, and I said, acting like Peter Bendix, according to AJ, that it was too early to make that judgment. It still is too early, and the Blue Jays have a couple of months before the deadline to really assess who they are, and you can't assess just yet. But at the same time, if they do not perform to their potential, if they are kind of hanging around 500 or even below at the deadline, I don't care how close they are to a wild card, at some point you've got to look yourselves in the mirror as a franchise and say, okay, where are we going here? Are we going forward with this group? Because this group has, like all teams, a limited shelf life. Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette are free agents after next year, after 2025. They haven't signed yet. I'm not even sure the Blue Jays want to go long-term with Guerrero after what they've seen the last couple of years. And because they haven't signed yet, at some point you have to make a hard call on them. They have some other players as well approaching free agency either this year or the next. So it depends how they're playing. And I was just looking this up, guys. The Mets last year, when they started tearing it down, when they made the first trade with David Robertson, that was July 27th. The deadline was August 1st. They were 48 and 54 at that point. 48 and 54. They were about 7 games out of the wild card. You kind of knew who they were. If the Jays are in that position, yes, they have to look at tearing it down. If they're 500 or a little bit above and within striking distance of the third wild card, I don't know that you can give up. I don't know that you should give up in this expanded playoff system because we've seen teams get in like the Diamondbacks did last year. And even with 84 wins, they did some big things in October. The Jays have invested a lot in this team. They've been waiting for years for this team to come together. They're not going to simply relinquish that very easily.
All right, Ken. Well, sorry, really quick. I know Eric said last one, but I have to ask this. What would it look like? Like, who would be on the list to move? Would it be one of their starters? Because their starters are super valuable, obviously. Bo Bichette is probably not the one, but, I mean, would they move a Springer? Would they move a Kiermaier? Would they possibly move Vlad? Alejandro Kirk has some value. Justin Turner's on a one-year deal. I mean, they have pieces. They have bullpen. Romano would be a nice fit in a lot of places.
All of the above. If you're going to do this, you do it. And maybe you hold on to Bichette and still try to sign him. Although, again, it hasn't happened yet, so maybe it's not going to happen. Kikuchi, I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe he's free after this year. So he would be one of them. Jordan Romano, maybe one more year. These guys are approaching free agency. It's not like they're first year of ARB or anything like that. So, yeah, you'd have to look at all of that. But again, they're going to want to see how their team plays. And if you look at the East right now, the Tampa Bay Rays are not what they have been in the past. Maybe they'll get to that, but they're not looking very good. The Red Sox have pitched like crazy. They've got all these injuries. They've played really well above themselves. I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain it. Then you have the Yankees and Orioles. They look like considerable forces in that AL East. And then you look around the league, nobody in the Central, I don't think, is going to be that much of a factor in the wild card race, though I might be wrong. Maybe it's the Royals and Tigers or the Twins factoring in as well as getting the division title. And then in the West, the Mariners look good, right? The Rangers, certainly you can expect big things from them. The Astros, we don't know. 9-19 right now. So if you're the Jays, you have to look at the entire landscape. Every team does. And again, it's too early really to get that deep into this. We're talking 3 months until the deadline. 3 months. As you guys know, in a baseball season, that's an eternity.
Ken, good stuff. And, you know, if we learned anything from this hearty discussion, flopping is real in baseball. Mm-hmm. Let's not overlook that from the top of the show. Flopping
and
is real.
I need Ken to do a breakdown of the sausage in Minnesota. I need him to get up there and break down the sausage and all of the health risks that are involved with this big piece of sausage.
I can't do any analysis of the sausage better than Rocco Baldelli did. That was
facts.
It was amazing.
Facts.
First question, obviously I did the game last night. First question was, so Rocco, tell us about your sausage. And he just busted out laughing.
It's good. That's the good stuff. Ken, thank you. We'll see you on Fair Territory Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.